I was wondering about something you said in the class last night.
Yeah.
Is it if the people wanted Moshe to, they said, you go, we will die, you go and tell us. Does that mean that they thought of him as a different kind of being?
Yes. Yeah, it does. They somehow felt like he was a something not quite human, which would explain why, because if you closely read the language of the people when, right before and during the golden calf, when they form the golden calf.
Yeah.
So they start off by saying the Elohim that took us out of Egypt, right? So there are Meforshim who suggest that they are referring to Moshe,
Right.
that the Egel is replacing Moshe. It's not replacing God, and they feel like they have to create some kind of intermediary that that it has to be somebody who's somehow superhuman. You could also imagine that since he's the conduit for the plagues and for so many of the miracles that they see, and that they thought of him as somehow transcending just regular human.
Right. So I don't know, is that a problem? Probably not for future generations, but for that generation. I don't know.
I mean, as a misunderstanding, you mean? I mean,
yeah.
right.
Well, if we feel about him the way that the Dor Midbar did, then I don't know if that's a problem.
Right, but we're encouraged not to. I mean, he dies, and
right.
And he errs like a person, and he's rebuked for it, and we see him talking about his limitations. So I don't think we are encouraged to come to that conclusion. I think it was just, I mean, think about all the people who have this problem with their own rebbes nowadays.
Right.
Right. It's
right.
very
that
hard.
Just occurred to me. It occurred to
right.
me that
it's
you go
very
through.
Hard.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, but we're supposed to, on the one hand, we're supposed to think of our teachers as angels in heaven, and on the other hand, we're supposed to realize that they're people who are fallible. And I guess you're supposed to go to one when you need the one, and go to the other when you need the other. But yeah. I mean, you'll hear people when they talk about even Rishonim, even people like Rashi, you'll hear people talk about them as if they're infallible.
Mm-hmm.
Now, and clearly, it's a useful strategy to think that he's not making a mistake, because that pushes you to try to understand what he's teaching. But to really believe that, that would be a problem. So even there, like, you have to sort of go back and forth with them, and certainly like with our own mentors. And yeah.
It's such an interesting. Well, my phone is ringing. I'm putting you on mute. Talk.
Okay,
go ahead.
Fine. All right, let's continue. All right, so now we're in Mitzvah 112. Yesterday, David suggested that really there should be some rule like this for anybody that's Tameh, but there is overtly a mitzvah like this for the Metzorah. And that is that he commanded us that a Metzorah be known to all such that people will separate from him. And that is his may be exalted saying, as the person with a leprous affection, his clothes shall be rent and he shall call out impure, impure, which means that you should be able to tell by his clothing. And then it's his personal responsibility to make it clear to anybody he comes in contact with that he is a Metzorah and that they're supposed to give their distance. The proof of, and so David was mentioning yesterday, shouldn't this be the case with anybody who has a kind of impurity that would render others or other things impure? Shouldn't it be just a necessary kind of public service so that people don't unknowingly expose themselves to impurity? And the proof about it's being a positive commandment is they're saying in the Sifra, because it is stated of the high priest, his hair shall not grow long and his clothes he shall not rend. I might think that this holds even if he is afflicted. In other words, the high priest, because of his position, is supposed to have a kind of a very particular dignified look. So he's not supposed to have long hair. His clothes shall be, shall look very dignified. In other words, he shouldn't rend them. What if he is a Metzorah? Is he allowed to grow his hair and have his clothing torn in that condition? How will I fulfill his clothes shall be rent and his hair shall grow long with all other peoples besides the priest? Hence we learn to say with a leprous affection, even if he be the high priest, his clothes shall be torn and his hair shall grow long and he shall grow out his hair. And it is clear, by the way, there are kings, I don't know about high priests, but there were kings, at least one king recorded in the book of Kings, in Sefer Malachim, who at some point developed tzara'as, and his son ran the affairs of state during the last few years of his life as he was afflicted by this tzara'at. It seemed like though he wasn't sent outside the camps. I think they had a special palace made for him or something, if I could remember correctly. So there was a case of a king with tzara'as, but I don't know if we have a record of a Kohen Gadol. Although, according to some commentaries, when Miriam got tzara'as, Aaron did get tzara'as, even though it's one of the questions that many ask, how come Aaron didn't get tzara'as? But there are commentaries who suggest that Aaron did in fact get tzara'as, and it's even hinted to in the language over there in that story with Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam at the end of Baal Loscha. So there you would have an example of a Kohen Gadol who had tzara'as. And it is clear that a high priest is prohibited with a negative commandment from rending his clothes and growing his hair long. The principle with us that any place you find a positive commandment, a negative commandment, if you can fulfill both of them, that is best. But if not, the positive commandment pushes off the negative commandment. So that's what we call aseh docha lo ta'aseh, or aseh docha lo ta'aseh. That means a positive commandment overrides a negative commandment. So as the Rambam's saying, if you can do both, then you do both. But if there's a case where it's one or the other, the positive commandment overrides. The rationale for that is generally suggested to be that ultimately we're here to act. In other words, the full expression of our lives and our purpose in this world is through our actions. So the positive commandment is more about fulfilling our potential. The negative commandments, staying away from the negative commandments, are not generally about fulfilling our potential, but they're about not hindering our potential. So the one could be said to be more emblematic of our purpose in the world, which would be the positive commandment. Staying away from negative commandments is a prudent, pragmatic gesture. I mean, obviously God's commanding us, but it's when we think about it in the big scheme of things, it's a way to prevent harm. But the actual symbol of our purpose in the world would be more about the positive commandment, and that's typically given as the rationale for why, given a choice, you do the positive commandment as opposed to hold up the negative commandment. And since we have found that their language instructs that when the high priest has tzara'at, he grows his hair out and rents his clothes, it indicates that it is a positive commandment. So in a sort of reverse engineering, the Rambam is determining that this is a positive commandment because they are including this in the discussion of a positive commandment overriding a negative commandment. So it must be that this is a positive commandment, and that's how he knows to list this as number 112 in the positive commandments. And the tradition has already come to teach that people with other impurities are also obligated to make us, here it is. Here it is. The Rambam is saying what David asked. The tradition has already come to teach that people with other impurities are obligated to make a sign about themselves such that other people will distance themselves from them. How do you like that? And the language of the Sifra is, from where do we know that the same holds for someone impure from a corpse or who had sexual intercourse with a menstruant woman? Hence we learn to say, and he shall call out impure, impure. And the explanation is that anyone impure must announce his impurity and place a sign upon himself through which it will be known that he's impure, and one who touches him is impure. Hence, they will distance themselves. And behold, it has been explained that women are not obliged in providing that for recognition of a mitzvah, and that is they're saying a man grows his hair out and rents his clothes, but a woman does not. But she does cover the lip and makes known that she's impure like impure people. So she has to find a different way to communicate it, that she's impure if she has tzara'at, but it's not ripping her clothes or growing her hair. But there it is. The Rambam says, and he says, we have this by tradition, which means it's from the oral law, that anybody who is impure has to publicize this somehow. So they have to say it. They also have to have some kind of an indication on them that they are in fact in a state of impurity, if their impurity would cause another or something else to become impure. So that is fascinating. Let's just see if I can see the source for this. No, this is going to be, this is all the laws of, this is going to be all the laws of leprosy. So it doesn't have the actual Hmm. Yeah, so mostly these places that are being cited as commentaries on this are about the general rules for a mitzvah. All right, whatever. Okay, let's into that. All right, so that's cool that we got that. All right, mitzvah 113. That is, he commanded us to process the red heifer so that its ashes be ready for one who needs it for purification from the impurity of a corpse, as he said, and it shall be for the congregation of the children of Israel. The laws of this commandment have already been explained in Tractate Para. Now, what's interesting here is he is not just saying that this is a mitzvah in the way that it doesn't sound like it. Remember, he on several occasions made this point that this is a mitzvah when we talk about purity and impurity. This is a mitzvah in the sense that once you decide to engage with it, there's a special protocol, there's a special way to engage with it. Not that you have to. So for instance, let's say somebody came in contact with the dead. There is a certain process that you go through to become pure. You have to be sprinkled on with the spring water and the ashes of the red heifer, and you have to wait 7 days. You sprinkle it on the third and seventh day, and you have to go to the mikvah and etc. Those are the rules about becoming pure. But the Rambam pointed out, you don't have to become pure if you don't want to. If you're non-Kohen, in most instances, you don't have to become pure, but if you choose to become pure, you do it this way. Here, he's making it sound like you actually need to process the red heifer in order to have ashes ready, so that there's an actual mitzvah to make this happen. I'm assuming at all times, if you ever have a red heifer, to process it, to make sure that you have ashes at the ready. Supposedly there is a para aduma right now. I know somebody, his name is Aaron Zimmerman, the son. Marty Zimmerman showed me a picture of this red heifer that people are visiting right now. And apparently it was sent from America, but apparently it qualifies, and that it is in fact a para aduma. You would think that there would have been more. Let's just take a look at it for a second. Rare biblically pure red heifer finds new home in Israeli heritage site, attracting global attention. Members of the Bonei Yisrael organization feeding red heifer cows imported by the organization from US at a farm in Hamadia near the northern city of Beit Shan. With imported red cows, ancient hymns, and growing support, some nationalist Jews hope to rebuild. Hundreds of visitors flocked to Shiloh in Samaria's Binyamin region on Thursday to welcome a biblically pure red heifer. So the picture above is not this one. The 22-month-old cow, which was brought to Israel from the United States, found a new home at the ancient Shiloh heritage site where the biblical tabernacle once stood. I was just there a few months ago. In the coming months, 2 more heifers. Oh, darn. Problem is these commercials. Go back. In the coming month, 2 more heifers will be transported to the town, and a center will open where dedicated on researching the phenomenon. The heifers will be kept in a fenced-off area. Visitors will not be able to touch them. The mysterious red heifer, or paraduma, is first mentioned in the book of Numbers. So I don't know why they're not processing it, because the Temple Institute has been processing these, but I don't know. Maybe there's another article here that explains, because according to them, these are paradumas. What does this say? See, why are they just looking at it? I guess it's sort of cute. Why are they just looking at it? Why aren't they processing it? Again, the biblical red heifer is in the news, sparking renewed discussion of a third temple. The mysterious red heifer, paraduma, is first mentioned. Jewish sources state this is exciting, an exceptional event for the entire Jewish people. We are already in touch with researchers and promoters around the world who are waiting to come with large groups. Again, why aren't they processing it? They had a temple era dinner. Okay. What's this? Yeah.
All right, we're gonna put the door in. Help me with this.
A representative for it said the one they said was 22 months.
So that's kosher.
They have to be 2 years. I think they have to be 2 years maybe or something, but
So
it's right around it. So by now they're 2 years, because these were a few months ago already. A representative for Bonei Yisrael, the Christian group that found and transported the animals, told Ynet that a ritually acceptable red heifer hasn't been seen in Israel for 2,000 years, and now we have 5. The cows were moved to a farm in Beit Shan originally, but now they're moving 3 of them to Shiloh. It said, Rev Yosef Tzvi Rimon, one of those tasked with inspecting the animals, said it's very exciting that we have red cows ready for the building of the temple with God's help. And in the meantime, to study. See, they're not doing it. I wonder what is the issue. Why is it? Obviously there's something. It's interesting. Why they're not actually doing it. Maybe they don't. I know they practiced. Let's see, these guys talk about it. picture.
It's cute.
Yeah, I think so. I think it could be a t-shirt. Red heifer t-shirt. A red heifer recently brought to Israel was displayed in ancient Shiloh. The heifer, which is a year and 10 months old, is completely red and was never born a yoke. The heifer was brought to ancient Shiloh. Hundreds of locals. The heifer has been raised with meticulous care to safeguard her purity. The conference began Thursday with festive temple meal of foods and breads similar to those prepared in temple times. The meal was attended by 250 guests. Was held at Psagot Winery. I was there with Shmuel. We were at Psagot Winery. The entire conference program was prepared in consultation with Professor Zohar Amar. The red heifer is expected. There it is. Again, no discussion about why they're not processing it and when they will process it. So there's obviously some holdup about that. Because if they could process it, as we're seeing from the Rambam now, they should process it. Because the Rambam is saying in our mitzvah that it's responsibility. It didn't say whose responsibility, but it is a responsibility of somebody to make sure that there are ashes available. So that makes it sound like if you've got them, you should be processing them. And we did see previously that the Temple Institute has been practicing the processing of it, but it's possible that just because they've been practicing it doesn't mean they actually know how to do it yet. Could be they're missing something. But anyways, I remember the excitement when one of the pastors from our trip thought they had one. And they were in touch with the Temple Institute, and the Temple Institute had somebody video it, and then they visited it. So they actually, one of their people went and visited it, and they said it was a candidate, but eventually it developed a white patch, and it wasn't. These appear, I guess they're making it sound like they are old enough. Yeah, but
Use them or lose them.
That's what I think. That's what I'm thinking. So why? So there must be some thing that they haven't been able to figure out. Because again, read this commandment. It says, and that is that he commanded us to process the red heifer so that its ashes be ready for one who needs it for purification from the impurity of a corpse. Now, who is us? Who is this mitzvah on? It says it commanded us. What does that mean? Who's us? Who's the bottom line? Who's the one where the buck stops there? Who's the one commanded? But there is a commandment so that its ashes be ready for one who needs for purification. So you've got these red heifers. Why aren't you processing them? By the way, David, were you on when we saw the Rambam, the previous Rambam, where he said that anybody who's impure has to communicate that they're impure?
Oh no, I heard the whole thing, and I'm sorry.
Okay, good. Good. No, that's okay. I just want to make sure you heard it. That's all.
Oh no, I didn't know whether anybody else was listening, so I didn't want to, I didn't want to congratulate you, whatever. But the primary idea about the warning came from Lois, and I remember that we should have. Where is it in Lamentations or somebody? We say that we have signs around us saying pure, impure.
Right. That we ourselves are like the Mitzorah. Yeah. But now you see even expanded. So that was cool. All right. So that's that. And now we have Hu Shitzivanu Ladum B'Din Erche Adam. This is the command, and you sort of your neck can hurt from swinging from one subject to another here. But now we're on the topic, Mitzvah 114, of setting up courts. So he commanded us to administer the law of human appraisals. So this is actually not a regular court. This is because erachim can be a court, but here it means that you are meant to figure out the value of a person. Remember, that was also, this is going sort of in the order of the Torah. And so erachim, this is what we call erachim, and that is that a human being at different stages of their lives has an evaluation, and it was the custom in the time of the Torah even for people to make donations to the Beit HaMikdash according to their value. So they would say, "Erchi alai," my value is upon me. So that is that he commanded us to administer the law of human appraisals, and that is one who says, "My appraisal is upon me," or the appraisal of X is upon me. So let's say this man was celebrating the bar mitzvah of his son or bat mitzvah of his daughter. So he might, in celebration, donate the value of his son or his daughter to the Beit HaMikdash. If he is a male, he pays such and such. If she's a female, he pays such and such, according to the age, as appears in scripture and according to the condition of the appraiser, the financial situation of the one who makes the declaration. And that is his saying, the appraisal of souls, and the regulations of this commandment have been explained in Arachin. So this is also in Leviticus, in those areas of Leviticus. So that makes sense why this is bundled together with some of those other laws of purity and impurity. At the time when our Thursday class was studying this, we tried to unpack why there would be a different value for men or for women when it comes to this. Why is there a value for different age groups? And we had none of the suggestions fully was satisfying, but you could say a value in the marketplace, like let's say for labor, let's say the way you worked it out was somebody who would be able to do heavy labor. So there you might say that's why a man would be valued more than a woman, because the man is perhaps more capable of heavy labor than a woman. Although in many cultures, the woman typically did a lot of the heavy lifting. Like I remember driving along a highway in the Shomron, and off in the distance we saw what it became clear was a man riding on a donkey with three women behind him who had baskets on their heads, walking. They were walking. And you see these kind of images in many cultures, which suggests that the women were tasked with doing heavy labor and the men weren't. But let's say we're talking about hewing stone from quarries. So hewing stone from quarries, there you're only going to see men doing that kind of work. You're not going to see women hewing stones from quarries, even in Arab countries. So let's say it was that. So therefore you could say, well, in that case, the men would have more value than women because they're capable of doing that, hewing stones in quarries. But that wouldn't explain why this was our problem. Why would it be older men are valued more than older women, or children? Why are boys valued more than girls? If in fact, at that stage, they are not doing that heavy labor. So you might say, well, the boys and girls, because that boys can grow up to be able to do heavy labor, but then it wouldn't apply to the older men. Why are the older men more valuable than the older women? They're not going to grow into doing more labor. So wherever we went with the discussion, we weren't able to fully unpack it, but that's the case. And that is mitzvah number 114, that you organize and set up this thing of the valuation of people. And then there's also valuation for animals. And that he's commanded us with the law of animal appraisals. And it is said, the animal shall be presented before the priest, and the priest shall appraise it. And the regulation of this commandment has already been explained in Tractate Arachin. Again, who is this commandment being spoken to? This and the previous one, because it says to set up. This isn't, it says, that is, he commanded us to administer the law of human appraisals. Who's administering it? Who's in charge of it? Who is the subject of this command?
Wouldn't it sound like wouldn't it sound like the Kohanim?
Right. In the next one, it does say you bring it before the Kohen. So maybe you'll say that this is on the corporation of Kohanim, that there's some kind of responsible body of Kohanim that this speaks to. But like if I was walking around with a clipboard and saying like who's in charge here, so it might, I mean, you could say practically it's probably a Kohen. But if somebody's going to be held accountable for this, or held responsible for this, you would think there'd be, somebody official. And also in the previous one, it didn't say anything about a Kohen. Just said, he commanded us to administer the law of human appraisals, and it doesn't even mention Kohanim here. Although clearly that's where the money's going. And then the next one is that he commanded us about house appraisals. And that is saying, if anyone consecrates his house to be holy, and the regulations of this commandment have already been explained in Tractate Arachin. Now you could say, if I'm the one who evaluated it, it's up to me to make sure that I end up giving the proper value. And you could say the individual is held responsible, but that's not the language. The language makes it sound, especially in Mitzvah 114, it makes it sound administer. He commanded us to administer. That's the language he used. Because again, in the other ones, I could just say it means I, the one who made the commitment, have to make sure that I followed through on the commitment according to the law. And that would mean that I'm ultimately responsible. That's not how it sounded in 114. And then just one more, 117, that he commanded us about field appraisals. And that is saying, if anyone consecrates any field, if a field that is not in his holdings, and likewise with a field of holdings, its appraised shall be according with its seeds and requirements, and with the purchased field, the priest shall compute for him the proportionate appraisal. Oh, so here you have it. The priest shall compute for him an appropriate, and the regular, so clearly the priest is the one who makes the appraisal. So is he the one who's commanded with the mitzvah, or am I commanded with the mitzvah? The regulation of this commandment have already been explained in Tractate Arachin. One should not think that these four types of appraisals have a commonality such that it would be necessary to only count them as one commandment. Rather, they are four commandments. Each one is a law that's separate from the law of the other. However, what is common to them is only the name appraisal, such that they share one name, Arachin. With careful observation, this is clear, because this is one where you could hear somebody going, really? It's all Arachin. It's just Arachin of people, animals, houses, and fields. So he's saying, no, it is using a common word, but don't be mistaken. They are four very distinct mitzvahs. All right, we will pause here and begin again, Bezrat Hashem Yitbarach Shemo, on Monday. I look forward to that.
Me too, Rabbi.
Be well.
Yesterday, I said, Moshe Wolf was teaching and he said, have an easy fast. And I said, I questioned whether on Tisha B'Av you say that. And he said, well, the Litvaks don't say it, but we say it.
You should have said, have a joyous fast. Then he would have
Right.
really
A
stuck
joyous
fast. Then he would have really
That's
stuck
funny.
it for the Litvaks.
Anyway, a meaningful fast in
You
any
too.
case.
You
Thank
too.
you. Thank
Be
you.
well. Be well.
Bye-bye.
Guys.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Be well.